everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of the Unlearn series. I'm your host, Omkar Pandharkame, and I bring to you conversations and insights from the best minds in the world of knowledge management, learning and development, and digital transformation. Unlearn series at Beehive is created to evangelize the best practices and enable knowledge sharing within the community of knowledge management practitioners, learning and development leaders, and CXOs who are leading digital transformation. Today, we are going to be talking about a rather interesting topic: workplaces, scattered knowledge, and confusion. It has been just about an year that life has resumed to normalcy, but most workplaces continue to operate in a hybrid format where most organizations are also continuing to be completely remote. But on the other hand, companies like Apple and Tesla have made it mandatory for employees to start working from the workplaces, from their offices. But on the other hand, organizations, startups like Lyft, Coinbase, or huge organizations like Accenture and KPMG and other giants continue to adopt a hybrid workplace. Apart from the many benefits of the hybrid work cultures, where employees might enjoy higher productivity, freedom, and also spend time with their families, it has one big leakage. The freedom of walking over to a colleague and getting your problem solved still continues to be a big challenge. Not having access to the knowledge they need because they're working apart from each other can cause serious issues. As the shift to work hybrid workplace was rather unplanned and happened fairly overnight, the ability to build great communication began, but not having knowledge bridges led to confusion. In fact, 20% of the time a hybrid worker is wasting to find answers to the questions easily known to peers. 8 out of 10 business leaders globally agree that onboarding a hybrid employee is difficult. In fact, Dr. Pushpa, it takes 2 times more the amount of effort and time to onboard an employee remotely. The solution to this is an effective KM strategy. And we got the best person in this domain to talk about it. We have with us Mr. Dr. Randhir Pushpa. Dr. Randhir Pushpa is a knowledge management practitioner, researcher, and a trainer. He is the co-founder of ACES Innovation, which is in a KM consulting firm, and it is based out of Singapore. He has more than 20 years of experience in KM and has a PhD in knowledge management from Indian Institute of Science. He writes regularly on knowledge management, and his key focus is to evolve KM practices that bring direct business benefits. He's researching on task-oriented knowledge management, which has the ability to create a direct impact on business results and performance. Hello, Dr. Pushpa. Thank you so much for joining me today in this Unlearn series. We're really looking forward in understanding how we can dissolve the confusion through knowledge management at the hybrid workplace.
Thank you. Thank you, Omkar, for having me. My pleasure.
Great. So, Dr. Pushpa, right off the bat, how was knowledge management before the pandemic? Was it in the best shape as it was, and then pandemic just scrambled it over, or did it require some fixing as well before the pandemic?
Okay. Before pandemic also, game was not in the best shape in the sense the adoption was slow. The focus though was on search related or finding the right content faster, those kind of stuff. Okay. So I would say the majority of the focus with respect to the game implementations as well as the technology companies as well as the AI related developments were happening in areas related to search enablement, how to find the right content, how to present the content, how to build insights through the content. That was the complete focus of game interventions across the organization. So before COVID, it was like the normal way things were happening, though game as a field was still on its face of showing it to the leadership team, its relevance, why it is relevant to the organization. That was the struggle that was happening before COVID. So that was the scenario. Essentially finding the right content, presenting the right content. That was the key challenge that game was facing.
And now as workplaces started shifting to hybrid, post the pandemic, what was one fundamental change? Did it still continue to be knowledge management is more about searchability, or did it evolve into something which is more dynamic?
See, what has happened is that because of COVID, everything has been disrupted. So the whole concept of future of work, right? I mean, how you work, everything has been disrupted. As a matter of fact, what I've been talking about is there is a change in power, or the powers power shifting has happened, and the employees have become more powerful. So even if organizations are pushing and asking employees to come back to their office, that is not the case. The hybrid kind of working will continue. So even if organizations say, okay, I'll be laying you off and all this thing, that may work for some time, but in the long run, that systemic change has happened. So employees have become more powerful, knowledge workers have become more powerful, and they will push for having work from home from a regular basis. Now, how that impacts knowledge management? So if you see, prior to the pandemic, there were defined channels for accessing information and knowledge. Your informal channels, everything was working absolutely fine. So even so, there were KM defined channels for sharing information, knowledge, but through the influence of knowledge management intervention, there were informal channels also created that were working pretty well in the physical setup. People were easily able to share knowledge, or tacit knowledge sharing was happening within the circles or within the silos wherever. But what happened with the disruption due to COVID, people started working from home. Their typical normal channels of accessing information and knowledge got disrupted. So that is with respect to tacit knowledge. Your tacit knowledge, how you were accessing, that got disrupted. That is point number one. Point number two, because the channels through which you are accessing tacit knowledge got disrupted, you started depending upon the explicit or the organization defined ways of accessing, or you started getting into the repositories to find the right content information knowledge. But unfortunately, what happened was that prior to COVID, the focus on systematically capturing information, storing it, tagging it was not happening. So when this entire thing went for a toss, when people started working from home, while relevance of KM became important, the tools were not there. Okay, so people started feeling like, I mean, isolated working. They completely got disconnected with other folks and all that kind of started impacting. And we did a study during the COVID time, and we found that more and more people started using the repository, going to the repository to find the information, but they couldn't find it because it was not designed for that, or rather it was designed for that, but it was not used for like that. So the change that is happening now post COVID, or in the hybrid model, is that there is a need to develop a virtual setup, in the sense what your physical space provided to the organization, now a virtual setup has to be created, and a virtual culture has to be created of sharing and collaboration, and that is the responsibility of knowledge management. That is where, so KM is becoming extremely important now as we go forward.
Got it. So what I'm understanding is knowledge workers started becoming more powerful, and then during COVID they started looking up knowledge because knowledge became more and more relevant and important. But then when they were going over there, they were not fairly satisfied, because itself the shop was not in the best shape in order to give out results, and it was primarily. And now there was this whole revelation as such, that okay, we need to start building on knowledge, especially after the pandemic. Now, especially at the hybrid workplaces, there have been researches which have shown both sides. Hybrid workplaces leads to increased productivity, and hybrid workplaces leads to not the best addition to productivity. I want to understand from your part that if a workplace follows a hybrid culture, how can knowledge management play an important role in increasing productivity of the organization?
See, essentially what is required, you have a project, you have a goal, there is a team working on that goal, they have to interact with each other and they have to complete the goal, right? Let's keep everything aside. Now, how the work happens, where the team sits, and all these things in material, the work should happen. Now, what has happened is that COVID showed that work can happen by having teams sit across different places also. Okay, so the virtual way of working also can create solutions, or can work, but there are some challenges in that, and those challenges is what now KM team has to handle it. So essentially, the hybrid workplace is going to be there, but Now the managers have got one more additional responsibility. They not only plan what work has to be done, they also plan where the work has to be done. For example, if there is an extremely complex piece of work that has to be done where there is a high level of communication that happens between the team members, there is a need for them to come together, sit together in the office and work. Or else not, I'll not call it as office, in any place where they can be face to face, because you still cannot beat face to face with respect to the kind of knowledge and information that it can help you transfer, because there are a lot of other kind of information, or even you sit together, you can have multiple types of communications happening there. So depending upon the type of work, you need to decide where people should come and sit and work. Okay, so the now what is happening is that managers have started looking into, okay, this is the work, can I look into it, who is required, when they are supposed to work, where they're supposed to work, all these things managers started looking into it. Now the role of KM here becomes, when the work is simple that can be done from home, how KM will be able to support. When there is a complex piece of work and people are coming, sitting here and working, how it can be supported. When there is a hybrid team working, because there is a team that is sitting in office or physically sitting together, and there's a team sitting outside, team members scattered, how are they going to collaborate with each other? These are the focus areas that the KM team has to work on. And they have the relevant tools that are also evolving, luckily, because the market is become, as we see the need that is there, the market is also evolving. So the KM team should be leveraging those tools to work on these specific areas.
Got it. And you think when all these pieces come together, I think the natural outcome is the productivity of the employee can increase, because I believe confusion at the workplace is inversely proportional to the productivity of the employee. Lesser the confusion, lesser hurdles he has or she has to access knowledge, higher the productivity. Now, I see that you mentioned it in my previous question, but I would like to maybe highlight it a little bit even more about that. If I am a digital leader of, let's say, a mid-size enterprise, and at the risk of getting free consultancy from you, what would be the three practical ways I can go ahead and get my KM strategy in place if I am running a hybrid workplace? What can be the three practical ways?
Okay, so if you're running a hybrid workplace, first and foremost, you should look into the work that is being done. Okay, that so we are going back to the basics. Okay, I would call it like that. We are going to back to the basics. We need to understand what work is being done, and based on that work, who is working on it. So work, what is the work that is being done? Understanding that in terms of simple, complex, complicated, that kind of an understanding, and who is working. For example, if you have an experienced team working on it, you just have to provide the relevant support system for them to coordinate and do it. If you have a new team working on it, okay, then it becomes additional challenge of getting them comfortable with the team. So you have to ensure that the knowledge channels are open for them to work with, the flow happens properly within the team, the coordination happens properly within the team, and then we have clarity on their information and knowledge efficiency. So you have to work on your repository. So if you ask me, one is work part, understanding the work part clearly as a manager, define properly, understand what is the work, what is complex, what is simple, where it should be performed, understand the capabilities of the employees, whether, so when you say capabilities, how experienced they are as a team working together, right? If they are not, then handle that accordingly. And the third piece is looking into their information knowledge efficiency. When will they need what kind of information or knowledge? Okay, from whom? Pace in which they need to share information or knowledge with each other. So these are the three elements I would say is critical from a hybrid workplace.
I wanna turn that question around a little bit, and I want to also ask you that what are the three things I definitely should not do if I am running a hybrid workplace, or maybe two things or one thing which I definitely should not do, so that my KM goes out of order.
Definitely should not do. So I'll put it another way.
Mhm.
First and foremost, you should definitely should not ignore your repositories. Okay, that is very important. That has been always important. Now it has become equally important. See,
Mhm.
okay, so that is very important that you should do. Second thing, you should be careful. You should be aware of who my employees are. Now, see what is happening is that your gig workers are coming in. Freelancing will happen big time. Okay. So, how do I ensure that all my knowledge is getting captured? So, this is another thing you should not be ignoring. Okay. You should be regularly capturing information and knowledge from the employees on a regular basis. When I say regular basis, not daily, but interval wise, or when the project is closed, ensure that you're capturing all the relevant information knowledge. So I think these are two, or should not do, or you how you want to handle it, but these are two things I would say that we should be.
Got it. Got it. Now, coming to my last question, you all love a great story, right? So, from your experience of leading knowledge transformation at multiple organizations, can you share with us a story typically during the pandemic or post hybrid work, which where a knowledge management strategy or knowledge sharing strategy was very well implemented, or it ended up showing results, or the other way around? That whether how a company goofed up their operations because knowledge was not in place.
So what I would do, Omkar, I would rather what I would talk about is multiple cases that we came across, and I will share it together as one specific. So what was happening during the COVID time and post that is that a lot of people were well, there were a lot of panic attacks and issues with individuals where they were feeling isolated. They were kind of, because of the way they were working, right? I mean, the people were sitting at home and not being able to connect with the overall organization. They were feeling isolated. Okay. And so essentially the issue was here is that they didn't have a well thought out strategy of connecting people to people. That informal networks, everything was broken. So people started feeling isolated. People started feeling depressed with respect to their work. They had no clue where the organization was going. They had no clue whether they will be there in the organization from a long term perspective. So your those organizations, even though they had a strong informal culture also, when they were not focusing on their the virtual setup, they were all getting impacted. So instead of a specific case, this I have seen in multiple cases that was getting, and it had its own impact with respect to the productivity of the employee as well as on the project delivery. It had multiple impacts like that. So this is one thing I would like to highlight from a overall what I could see.
Got it. So informal knowledge sharing network was pretty much the baseline for something well to happen.
It completely got disrupted. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Last question. On a personal front, Dr. Pushpa, given a choice, would you like working in a fully dedicated space, going back to the workplace completely, have a hybrid, or have a remote, considering, let's say, you are leading a 5,000 employee size company? What would your strategy be and why?
See, I would, I'll start with my own company. Okay. So we are COVID babies. When we just started before the pandemic. Okay. Now pandemic's over, and when I plan for a physical setup and when I'm talking to my team and all that, there is a resistance to a large extent of people coming back.
Yeah.
So what we realized is that we cannot go back to the old model of physical setup where everybody comes every day. That is not going to happen. Okay. So the hybrid mode is what is going to happen. That is first thing. Okay. Second thing, why it is good for companies. What has happened is that because of this hybrid mode of working, the organization also got an opportunity to source employees across the world.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, talent sitting anywhere can be sourced and they will work for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Most so essentially what happens now, we are a Bangalore and Singapore based company, right? But we have talents across. Okay. They don't have to come to our key locations and work. They can work from anywhere. When required, we call them, we fly them down to whatever physical location that is required, but otherwise we don't need them to come. And this is going to be the way things will work soon. Okay. Even if you have a major office set up in, say, one of those cities, say Bombay or Bangalore, you will have to create nodal offices across, because that is the way things will be happening. If you have to tap into the talent, best of the talent will not move. If I have all have a very good skill set and all these things, I may also apply for jobs outside of India and sitting in India, right? I mean, so that is the way things are happening. So considering that if for a large organization, I would not suggest them to get into having all their employees into their physical setup unless their work demands like that.
Got it. But you would still like to have a workplace, a physical workplace where team meets can happen, where some kind of informal networks can develop.
Absolutely. See, I will not call it as informal network. Okay. See, informal network can be created in the virtual setup also. You will need a physical setup for all your discussions, your high-end meetings, technical. And then the other thing is that your client itself will ask for you, where is your physical setup?
Yeah.
If I'm giving you a large project, I would like to see a physical setup where you are there.
Yeah.
Okay. Completely virtual, they will not accept it. It will be risky for them, or they are not used to seeing a completely virtual organization. So they will definitely ask for a physical setup. That will be there. But your physical per se, the way it has been, it will not do. Or I will say the way work has been done, it will not be like that. It will change that.
Got it. Got it. Brilliant. Perfect. This has been very insightful. I really enjoyed our conversation. So thank you so much for taking off the time and sharing your insights, your best practices, and in the spirit of knowledge sharing, extending your years of experience to other set of knowledge practitioners. So thank you so much.
Welcome.
Perfect. All right, guys. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next week with another exciting episode at the Unlearn series. And have a good one. If you're working from home, this would be a great time. If you're working from office, this is a great podcast to listen while you're driving to work. All right. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.